Good evening. I herewith call the September 27th, 2017 meeting of the City of Gaithesburg's Historic District Commission to order. And I'd like to start with a check on who's on the dais. May I start on my left?
Frank Johnson.
John Schlichting.
Robert Love.
Mary Jo LaFrance.
Chris Hurts.
John Roddy.
Dean Ventola.
We have
Excuse me.
bless you.
Bless you.
We have a forum, and Robert, you'll be acting as a full commissioner this evening. Let me
Sir
read.
Chair, we're not on
Oh, yes.
upstairs.
Excuse me, as a technical matter, AV, are we up and running? Because on the screen, we just,
You're on this screen.
oh, we are, okay, well, we're up and running then, good. All right, let me read the protocols under which we're operating. This commission is empowered to meet and act under Article 12 of the City Code of Gaithesburg. The technical qualifications of the staff of this commission and the members of this commission are on file with the City of Gaithesburg and are available on request to any applicant and are hereby made a part of the legal record of each and every application heard this evening. Each application heard this evening is considered on its own merits and is not to be considered as establishing a precedent for any other application. Very well. Our first order of business is approval of the minutes. So, commissioners, have you had a chance to look at the minutes? Any?
I have three thoughts I'd like to
Okay,
add.
three thoughts. Please,
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Ventola.
Just two minor changes to some words and then one addition. So on page 2 of the minutes, at the top, just for clarification purposes, I'd like it to read as follows. The first paragraph says Commissioner Feinstein asked if there's a functional reason the doors need to be replaced. I think I would recommend adding the word why into it and say so it reads as Commissioner Feinstein asked if there is a functional reason why the doors need to be replaced. That's more grammatically correct. And then the second paragraph, where it says Commissioner LaFrance asked if the doors could be repairs, just please change that word to repaired as well as modified to open overhead. And since she's present, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
I was going to mention it, so thank you.
Okay,
Dean.
very good. And then on the last page, it says on the top, the first paragraph, he, and it's referring to myself in the previous page, he also noted that a metal roof would match the roofs of the historic buildings near the Arts Barn, period. He also said he favored the existing cedar shakes, and I'd like that to read as follows. He also said he favored the existing cedar shakes over the Echo Star fall cedar shingles, but still prefers the metal roof.
Very well, thank you very much, Dean. Any other commissioners, any edits, comments? Very well. Chris, did you capture
Yeah, I got
those?
it.
Okay, well, the chair is open to a motion to approve the minutes as amended by Dean.
I would so move as amended.
Okay, have we a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposition? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good catch.
All right, our first substantive matter business tonight is a historic area work permit at 27 Walker Avenue, the removal of 5 trees. Do we have a staff presentation,
We
Chris?
do.
I'm used to looking for you over there.
Can I ask for conflicts?
Oh, yes, excuse me. Do we have any conflicts?
No.
No.
Okay, thank you very much. My trusty vice chair, as much as possible, keeps me out of trouble between him and Frank. Please, Chris.
The subject property includes a 1.5-story craftsman-style building that was constructed circa 1912. 27 Walker is zoned R90, medium-density residential, and is contributing to the Brooks, Russell, and Walker Historic District. The historic area work permit comes before the HDC in accordance with Section 24-227A of the City Code. The applicant seeks removal of 5 trees, 1 crepe myrtle, 3 red cedars, and 1 red mulberry. According to the applicant, the crepe myrtle conflicts with his landscape plan. The red mulberry tree is dying, and the cedars are in poor condition. The Brooks, Russell, and Walker Historic District design guidelines apply. When the applicant submitted his applications, he also requested approval for removal of 2 other red cedar trees. Staff issued tree removal permits for those 2 trees after the staff arborist found them to be hazardous. This was in accordance with the Historic District's design guidelines, which permit issuance without a hearing when a licensed arborist provides a statement, and that is described in this section here. And this section of the design guidelines pertains to the review criteria for living trees, such as impact on streetscape, impact on neighbor or neighbors, age, size of tree, health of tree, species rarity, specimen value, applicant's need/reason for removal, property or neighbor's need for removal, and or association with a landscape plan. The crepe myrtle has numerous stems competing for dominance, and as mentioned, it conflicts with the applicant's planting plan. Also, there are a number of examples of crepe myrtles in the neighborhood. The staff arborist said it would not be reasonable to transplant the tree elsewhere on the property due to its size. The 3 remaining red cedar trees, and I'll point out the 2 that the tree removal permits have been issued for. It's this tree and this one. So this one, and on the end here, those 3 are still standing. Have green canopies at their tops, but they are shaded by the neighboring trees. These trees will continue to grow and compete with their neighbors, but eventually the lack of available sunlight will necessitate their removal. The red mulberry tree, which is this tree right here, and then you can see the dead branches in the foreground. It has an irregular structure, likely due to the amount of shade from the neighboring trees. The red mulberry has grown largely in one direction, making the canopy uneven. This could eventually endanger the tree's stability. It also has invasive English ivy vines growing in it. The red mulberry tree was the only one of the 5 trees listed in the 1999 tree inventory for the Gaithesburg Historic District. So staff seeks a condition that a replacement tree is planted in its place. Is there any questions about the 5 tree removals?
Is the applicant?
The applicant is not here.
Okay, great. So any comments from the audience? Okay, let me start on my left. Robert, any thoughts?
You said it was just the red mulberry tree. What are the reasonings for not making them replace the rest of the trees?
Because they weren't listed in the 99 tree inventory, so we have no apparatus to require replanting if they weren't there at the time of that survey.
At the time of the survey. That was my only question. Thank you.
Mary Jo?
All of the trees seem to be compromised, and I do support the replacement of 1 tree, but we may want to discuss with the applicant as to where, so that it doesn't have a similar conflict with other trees.
I don't know if we want to get into that.
Or, I mean, staff, we may,
Yeah.
yeah, with staff.
Yeah, we could work with him to find a location that works for his planting plan.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Roddy?
I would note that the crepe myrtle is a sort of a valuable piece of vegetation. It's one of the very few things that is in bloom at this late time of the year. The size of this particular shrub and the dryness of the climate right at this time and for the foreseeable future make the transplanting of that particular tree a no-go. So I'm afraid that's not going to make it. As a practical matter, with regard to the mulberry and the red cedar, those are very invasive trees, and I don't think are really suitable for a residential application. They're very invasive, and frankly, those as well as the ailanthus we're going to speak about in a couple of minutes are enemies of the state and should be dealt with severely.
Commissioner
I
Vitale?
saw that they were invasive. I didn't know that they were enemies.
Enemy of the state, all right.
My computer locked up, so I can't even tell you what page it's on, but I saw an exhibit that had several trees, tall, vertical, leafless trees, with the arrows pointing to them. There were the 3 arrows. Can you pull up that photo
Sure.
for me? That's it.
There you go.
My only question on that is, if you look at the tree to the far left, I don't understand why there's not an arrow on that one.
That is one of the 2 trees that an emergency tree removal permit has already been issued, so that
Thank
tree
you.
is already gone.
Okay, thank you so much. It's my only question.
All right, thank you. I have no comments. So the chair is open to a motion to approve the recommendation.
Well, I would move that, and I would adopt the language that is provided by staff, that the Historic District Commission, based on the exhibits submitted in the applicant's testimony and the staff report, findings and recommendation, grant HIST 7685-2017 to remove the 5 trees in the rear yard, finding it to be in compliance with section 227.2 of the city code, with the one condition that we replace the 1 tree. And I think we should leave it to staff to discuss with the applicant the type of tree and the location.
All right, have we a second?
A second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Chris, would you record the vote as 5-4 and none against?
Yes.
All right, we're moving along to 111 Chestnut Street, where we have several things going on here. Shutters, rear porches, and a retroactive shed permit. So, and I see the applicant here is welcome, madam.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Oh, any conflicts here?
I would like to disclose that we are neighbors and we live in the same historic district.
Okay, can you be fair and impartial?
I can.
As is your wont.
Yes.
Very well. Ma'am, would you please introduce yourself for the record?
Hi, yes, this is Veronica Henriquez. I live in 111 Chestnut
Well,
Street.
welcome. It's very nice to have you here tonight, and you have a beautiful home.
Thank you.
Chris, would you like to?
Yes, the building at 111 Chestnut Street is a 1.5-story Cape Cod-style residence that was constructed circa 1951. The property is zoned R90, medium-density residential, and is non-contributing to the Chestnut Meme Historic District. The HOP comes before the HDC in accordance with Section 24-227A of the City Code. The applicant requests the HDC approve 3 work items: an addition with a porch, siding replacement, and a retroactive shed permit. The Chestnut Meme Historic District guidelines note the following in regard to house design elements on page 16. Mixing elements from different styles and periods is unacceptable. That's the pertinent point from this particular page. The guidelines continue for accessory buildings, outbuildings, and new construction on page 21. Garage and storage sheds should be similar in architectural style as the main house. And that is the pertinent point on this page. So first, the addition. The applicant seeks to demolish the existing side porch addition on the south elevation and replace it with a new 624 square foot addition with rear porch. So this is where that addition will be located. The proposed addition will be stepped back 1.7 feet from the front of the residence and will include an expanded living room, a master bedroom, and walk-in closet back here. The proposed porch to the rear of the house would measure about 236 square feet. I'll now go through the existing photos and proposed plans for all 4 elevations. So this is the west or front elevation. And as you can see, there is currently a shed roof enclosed porch on that elevation. It will be removed in favor of the living room addition. On the south or right side elevation, here's that porch addition currently, and it will be removed in favor of this low-pitched roof addition. The applicant did that low-pitched roof so the window that currently exists in the upper story, which you can't, well, here it is in this photo, so that window could be maintained. And here's the rear elevation, how it currently looks, and here's the proposed addition with the porch, which will be covered by different roofs. And here's the side in the rear, and here's the addition on the back. Next, the siding replacement. The applicant proposes to replace the aluminum siding on the existing residence so it matches the siding that will be placed on the addition. The applicant said that the proposed siding will be the same as what is found on the white vinyl shed in the rear yard. And here's a photo of the siding on that shed. The German siding has a faux wood grain finish, and when I'm done here, I'll pass around a sample which the applicant brought in. Finally, the applicant seeks retroactive approval for the placement of a 77 square foot shed in the rear yard, and we're talking about this shed here, this metal shed. It's located to the north of the white vinyl shed that was approved by the HTC at the May 2015 meeting with HIS 6996-2015. The metal shed rests on pier foundations and features paired doors and a gable roof covered with shingles. It was placed at some point between June 2015 and January 2017, and it first came to the attention of staff in July of this year. So to summarize, first for the addition, the proposed addition conforms to the design guidelines and will not have a negative effect on the historic or design significance of the surrounding historic resources. Staff would like a condition to work with the applicant on the roof details and the rear yard over the porch. Staff supports replacing the aluminum siding with vinyl. The aluminum lap siding likely is not original to the residence, and vinyl siding will not have a negative effect on the historic or architectural significance of the surrounding historic resources. The HDC recently approved the replacement of aluminum siding with vinyl for a non-contributing resource in the Chestnut Meme Historic District when HIS 7490-2017 was approved for 118 Meme Avenue at the January 2017 meeting. Staff does not condone placement of the shed without a HOP and a shed permit, but the shed is compatible with the property and neighborhood and is minimally visible from Chestnut Street. It also meets all city code requirements for location, size, height, and setbacks. And Ms. Enriquez is here if you have any questions, and I'll pass around the sample that she brought in.
Right. Does anybody in the audience want to speak to this in any way? All right. Madam, thank you. You do not have to. Chris did a wonderful job, and you're welcome if there's anything you'd like to add or say.
The only thing I can say is I love the area, and I have one child, and then the house is really small. We only have 2 rooms upstairs, and I would love to have a regular room downstairs because it's too small, the house. We have a big land but a small house, and I love the area, and I don't want to move from it, so that's why I decided to do this, and
Yes.
hopefully it will be working out.
Yes. Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank
Dean, let me start with you this time.
Okay, questions or discussions?
If you want to ask the applicant. yeah.
Just one question that I have is, I believe the addition is going to be 14 foot 6 inches wide. What is the width of the existing bump out? Because there's no existing plan in the set that I saw.
Yeah, I would estimate, and we have measured it in the past, I believe it is approximately 10 feet.
Okay, so another 4.5 feet. Okay. That's my only question. I can start comments
Please.
if you guys are ready.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, yes, please.
My biggest, I have two big concerns with this. One is, well, first let me ask you, Chris, I do have one more question for
Sure.
you, is why is this not a contributing resource? How old is the building?
The building was constructed in 1951, so when the district was created in the late 90s, it had not yet reached the 50-year mark.
That's the only reason.
Well, the period of significance is well before this building was constructed.
Which is what dates?
I believe it cuts off in the 1920s.
Oh, okay, all right. I would think that this would be worth preserving because of the style and the architectural detail is quite appropriate in the existing conditions. So my big concerns are the roof massing. The length of the building itself, the addition, I should say, is a concern because it is so long, so big and so long. I personally believe it needs to be broken up into a smaller area, not just one big long thing, but maybe a step out or a step back.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, absolutely.
When I talked to Chris about doing the planning or the drawing, I was wondering if we can do the room next to it, like how is the porch already there, so I cannot build to the back, so to do the big roof like you're talking about, but like maybe the code doesn't allow to build next to it, like already the porch is already there. So if we had a permission to do the room next to the house where the porch is, I didn't want it to build to the back. Like,
Oh, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, you're saying that there's a side yard setback preventing you from growing out further.
to the back.
Right, I understand this. Chris, do you know what the side yard setback, how far from the side yard setback?
Well,
or
it's
is
not
she-
necessarily in play because it would have to be a total of 15 feet, and it looks like there would be about 10 feet on this side. So there is room to go into the side yard. It was staff's preference that we keep it as short as possible from extending into the side yard to maintain the mass
You're
of
saying keep
the
the
original
width
structure.
as
Right.
minimally wide as possible. I get that. Well, one suggestion would be to break up that straight mass is if you made the living room just a little bit wider to the right, maybe another foot, kept the master bedroom where it is, that would give you a breakup in that mass.
Yeah.
It would also give you something else that I'm interested in seeing is the roof that you have on there is probably I'm fighting between which is more difficult for me visually, is the straight shot or the very flat roof. So if you can step the living room out from a different plane than the master bedroom, just pull it out, like I said, another foot, maybe two, then that can have its own roof over the living room going one way, a gable end, which
Yeah.
is similar to, well, it's representative of the current house roof plane direction. And then turn the roof on the master bedroom perpendicular to that. That would be a more standard way of handling the massing of any house of this style. So that would resolve, I think, two things at once. The other question I have is, because I didn't see a second floor plan, not that it's necessary because you're not doing anything to the second story, but are there just two bedrooms upstairs?
Yes.
Right. And then the bedroom on the right has currently 3 windows, one in the front, one in the back, one on the right-hand side.
Yeah,
So there's a
it's
front
two
door,
windows each, 2 windows in each room.
The rear elevation and the window on the left, is that in the bedroom?
One is in the bathroom and one is in the hallway.
That's a hallway window here. I've been in the house several
Oh,
times.
so there's the hallway on
and
the back?
That's the bathroom window.
Okay, so there's a
So
hallway
the
on the
two
back.
bedroom windows, one,
Okay.
one, and one, so they each have
Okay.
2.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm not sure. I think changing the roofs like I suggested, having a smaller gable with a cross gable on the back, I think would help increase the pitch of the roof a bit, but it would certainly take away from this big, long, giant mass.
Yeah.
So that's important to me. Second thing is the windows. If you look at the elevation, the side elevation, if someone could put it up on the screen for the audience, those windows appear to be short, particularly on the two on the right, short and wide. But everywhere else in your house is thin and tall, which is a more traditional way of doing things. So I strongly recommend that you change the window style to be more in keeping. But a bigger thing is, if we go to the front elevation and maybe a photo of, the front elevation windows, if you can see a photo, well, that would be good. Perhaps you can reuse those windows and then look at the side elevation windows, if you can find a picture for me, Chris. That side elevation architecturally is really quite good. I hate to lose that elevation, and your addition is essentially going to be doing that. But at the very least, can you reuse those three windows, bank them together in your living room rather than have the tiny, small windows? It'll give you more light, but it'll also be reusing your existing material, which I'm sure we would find favorable. But they're very, very elegant looking windows. I would hate to have you, have them go away from the job site. So those are my comments.
You mean to use those windows?
Reuse these for the
But
new.
those windows are not really good. They're
Okay.
really bad
Then,
condition.
then I suggest if you look at the proportion of the windows, duplicate the proportion of those windows for the new windows that you're using.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's it.
John?
I would have to say, I think Commissioner Ventola made very good points on both of those issues, and I would agree with him.
All right. Very good.
I feel the same way. I'd actually prefer if the addition could be a little smaller on the side and wrap around to the back, but I understand that that is not possible.
Commissioner Love?
Just a quick question. I do agree with Commissioner Ventola on both items that he was speaking of. You talk about removal of the shutters at the paired windows on the south right side elevation. Can I ask why you're recommending that?
Because it just doesn't, it's not functional. We want at least the appearance of functionality with the
They're
shutters.
not- If these were to close, they wouldn't close.
They would
the
close
whole
over the window.
Yeah.
But if they were to change the window to make them the longer, thinner ones, could they?
I don't think they need shutters
Right.
architecturally. If
Right.
you look at this house on the side elevation, there are no shutters. And
Yeah, it's
I
only on the
think,
front.
and generally, it's quite appropriate for shutters to be only on the front, nowhere else on the house. That's
Okay.
that's a style to present your best foot forward type thing. So I think that I'm in full agreement that the two wide windows with shutters, those should not have shutters. And I actually also believe that those particular windows need to be changed proportionally.
But can these two windows be together, or it has to be only one window?
No, I think they could be banked personally, as long as they're thin and tall, banked together. Because you look at the triple window, those are three of them banked together without shutters, and those windows look fantastic to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I hate to see them be gone.
Right. Well, let me build on that, if I may. I always bat last. First, I think, good news for you, because everything we are proposing is actually going to save you money, which is not our job, but what the heck. So I want to stay with the windows for a minute, and then I want to come back to Dean's suggestions. There have been a number of studies lately, and no matter what condition these windows are, through Home Depot and Lowe's, you can order combination storms and screens, and they actually have done studies that will give you all the insulation and all the noise deadening qualities of brand new windows. So this would be for you to discuss with your contractor. But honest to goodness, you give the measurements and there may be $100 a window or something like that. You can pick the color and anything you want. So I think you may find you are going to be able to use these lovely windows, and they are lovely, both the three on the side as well as the one in front. And and really have what you want in a very efficient way.
But these windows, it look good in the picture, but these windows, they don't have store windows. They don't have you can see that like in the cold weather, they sweat a lot, and
Sure.
then they have a lot of glass broken,
Right,
and then
right.
they don't have insulation on it.
Right.
Maybe because they did it for a porch,
Sure.
not for a room.
Sure.
So if I think like you say, these are really good windows. Like in the regular rooms, they are really good windows. I wish I can find windows like that because they are really good windows and they don't make it like that anymore.
Okay.
But
Well-
these windows, if I could use it, I will use it. But
Well-
they are not in good condition.
I could
understand-
help
I
you.
understand completely, but would you at least be willing to, as
Yes.
you're going forward, talk with Chris about, again, I think you may get a very pleasant surprise, because I have done this with old log cabins. I have done this with windows
Yeah.
where you can, I mean,
Yeah.
really, and the wind goes through, so you may have a pleasant surprise, and I think those windows would look lovely. Would you put the side elevation up again, please? Not only do I agree with everything that Dean suggested, I just want to throw one more thing in. I believe it was Chris's suggestion that this long addition was set back from the front of the house. And one of the reasons the slope of the roof is so shallow in the front is that you don't want to lose that window on the end.
On the second
Yeah.
story, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to move, I think this could be
It's a
very
good idea.
interesting architecturally. If you move the start of your porch back a little bit further, I think it could be very interesting from the front of the house and would let you give a steeper pitch coming up.
Change
But I
the words
also,
from
excuse
porch.
me, excuse
No,
me.
change the words from porch to living room, because it's not a porch, so she understands what you're
Could I?
saying. I'm just saying to help her understand what you're saying.
Okay. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we'll move this. And
Um,
start.
And I'm agreeing completely with Commissioner Ventola that when you come to your bedroom in the back, if you wanted to turn that roof, it would be very interesting and might even give you more room. So those are my thoughts. So, any?
Yeah, but if we do it like that, the living room in the other side, we cannot make it bigger because in the back there are the stairs for the basement, so the living room won't be, we won't have the space that I wanted to expand it to.
I don't know. Oh, all
I'm
right, so
talking-
the stairs that go down the basement, there's a door in the kitchen, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
That goes down, yeah.
So if we build, like you say, farther where the picture
Right.
is,
Yeah.
the living room won't,
Okay.
it will be really small and
Oh, I was saying go out even further. In other words, if you bring it from the front to the back, continue the back further out. Make it the
Deeper.
same length.
Yeah, in the back.
Well, anyway, these are our thoughts. It is obviously your home and you do what's best. I think if you work with Chris, I think you may get a very, very, very pleasant surprise on the windows and keep the attractiveness of the house and keep your costs down, but they will end up being as efficient, I think. There are studies on this as going out and buying replacement windows.
yeah. I
Okay.
understand that windows are really expensive.
And they'll last longer than the replacement windows.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much. So, commissioners, what is your pleasure?
Now, what do we do?
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Because there are things that we suggested, but we have to act upon one way or the other. We have to say it's required or it's not. We don't have an option. So, the roof is one. That is the roof pitch to break up into two separate roofs is one. Bumping out the living room or reducing the size of the bedroom, either way, but obviously she wouldn't want to reduce the size of the master bedroom. So bumping out the living room to the right is the second to break up that massing. And the third, and it's Chris's idea, and it's a great idea, is to essentially move the entire addition further back. Now, before we act upon that one, I want to explain to you, Chris, what she was referring to. Chris, if you could look over here.
Yes, I'm looking at it.
Oh, and I'm just saying, I'm pointing out right here.
Yes.
This area right here, this is actually outside.
Okay,
So what she's saying is that if we move this, if we say we want this moved,
Right.
she's saying then that reduces her overall living room length. So that's her concern. And I'm all for moving this back, but this doesn't get moved. That stays where it is.
okay.
So it reduces her size of her living room. That's all, the width of her living room.
Okay.
Okay, that's all. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood.
I don't think that's dispositive, but that's an architectural discussion for a different day. So anyway, what is your pleasure, commissioners?
Well, we could take one at a time. I would recommend that we, if there are just these three elements, if there's a fourth, throw it in. But if there are these three elements, I think we should vote on them individually and then have it as a motion. Does that sound good to everybody?
All right, well, one is removing the shutters and the paired windows.
On the south.
And I think it sounds like the applicant understands and is willing to have windows that would be taller or narrower to
Yes.
fit with the rest of the house. Another condition is the applicant's willingness to work with the staff on those rear porches prior to submission of the actual permit application and retroactive approval of the shed.
I guess what I'm concerned about is if we approve the application for the addition, are we approving what's been before us tonight? And if that's the case, then I don't know that I could support that approval.
We
Yeah.
can with the caveats.
Okay,
Yeah.
then that's what I was looking for, okay?
Yeah. Well, Robert, any thoughts?
Please.
Mm.
If they decide for the room,
So
can we do
each of these, can we be clear first, I guess, with each of them?
separate,
What are we
but
adding
I
to each
still
of them? Or do you want
want
to just go
to
through,
stay a
like
little
Dean said, and
maybe
go,
like that.
first
Can
one
do that.
added this,
Yeah,
second
I
one
think
add
so.
this, third one, possibly a
I
fourth
want the space.
option
Yeah.
also?
Yeah, I think we can add as we go, that way it wouldn't be so complicated. It would flow nicely.
Okay, let's do that.
All right,
Does that
well,
work?
can we agree that whatever fenestration is on that side of the addition will be without shutters?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that takes care of one. Can we jump ahead to three and agree, as long as they come back with a retroactive request for the shed, that we can be in support of retroactively supporting that small little metal shed that was attached to the other?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so now here we are with, if we need to juice up number two.
Yes. Dean, would you like to work that?
Sure.
please?
Well, I mean, we're going to vote on the three individual
Yeah.
parts, is that right? Okay. The first is to break up the long mass of the side elevation, the right side elevation, that we would require that either the living room bumps out a foot more, or the master bedroom moves in a foot less than currently shown, so there's a 1 foot offset between those two planes. Does that sound correct?
Yes.
Can you put in there the exact, front, side, rear, exactly?
Well, essentially, it would be, looking in plan, the right side exterior wall, which is currently one plane, would wind up being split at the living room and master bedroom connection. And so the living room would either go out a foot to make for the split in mass, or the master bedroom would move in a foot. Either way is fine with us, I would
foot to
believe.
where?
Either this comes out.
As long as there's an
or the
offset.
bedroom comes out a foot.
Okay, so that's the first one.
Oh.
So do we
Just
want to
it's a
vote on
small-
that? Well, I
So
guess
maybe-
you want to hear.
What does that offset by you?
It breaks up the mass. If you look on the right side elevation, it's one big giant long mass. And that's not appropriate for that style architecture, or really any architecture, it's too big.
Okay, would you go back to the previous drawing, Chris? Yeah, thanks. And is the line right now that currently represents the delineation between the living room and the bedroom, does that line up? Where does that line up? Go back to that, to the other one, the next one. Okay, yeah, where is that inside? Does it line up with
This-
the back of the house?
Yeah, it is.
That's-
Okay,
lines up with the
perfect,
back.
perfect. I gotcha. All right, that makes perfect sense. Gotcha. Okay. So that inset or offset,
The offset.
the shiplap, however it laps,
Right.
will be lining up with the back of the house, or more or less.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
got it. Okay, thank you.
So do we want to vote on that? Is that a requirement, or is it something that we should pass on?
A condition, I would vote yes for condition.
Okay,
John?
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Okay,
and I'm a yes.
all right.
Did you want to vote on that, Chris?
Well, I want to see if there's anything else as we put together a motion.
All right, next is the roofs. Right now, it is one gable end roof. We're gonna break up the massing, so it'll be two shed roofs touching each other. And I'm proposing that the frontmost roof, facing the front of the street, converts into its own gable, because that would be appropriate, because it's now a mass that bumps out. And then the back roof should be a reverse gable, which is very appropriate for this style, and actually most styles of architecture. So are we, do we have any discussion, or do you want to vote on that?
I don't see how she can gable the front over the living room and not blow out that window up
That's what
above.
I was starting to think
No,
that too.
you can do it with, it would just be the same pitch. And depending on Chris's thought, let's just say it's the same, if Chris's suggestion of moving the mass back, the whole addition back doesn't fly, then what it would wind up being is the roof would come up to the center peak and then go back down again. So it'd still be a gable end. And it would still be the shallow gable end that you see now.
At the
Personally,
same pitch?
I can't support that.
Well-
I don't see that as
I'd like to increase the.
feasible for the applicant, nor something we should impose. Just personally, I don't know how the other
How is it
commissioners
not,
feel.
how is it infeasible?
Thank you, Dean. If you could draw it, I'm very visual, so I need to see that.
Yeah, she wants to retain that window. If you want to do the bump in, bump out, fine, but let that just be a long shed then, if it is.
The contractor made me a suggestion, if I can ask.
Sure.
If the top window, if any chance, it can be smaller, if there is any possibility, so we don't have problem with the new roof. Or I already asked this question, I'm sorry, I don't wanna make confusion, but the beginning, I wanted to have if I wanted to make the addition of the living room, I wanted to have the same line of the wall, but since the porch is back, so that's why we draw it like that, how it is. But if my concern was if we can do it the same line of the house, the same wall, not to be back like how it is in the picture. I did it before, I brought the plan to Chris, but maybe we thought
Okay,
doing that
all right,
the same, because in the living room would be the space
right,
if we spend it, and then
gotcha, okay. So, Chris, I believe you had suggested that so I think what the applicant's saying, so Dean, take this into account,
Mhm.
that
and
if
make
we
the
were,
small-
which is I think what she would prefer, is to let that living room addition start parallel, in a line with the front of the house, And she's also willing to, maybe you wouldn't even have to get a smaller window, maybe you could just raise that window just a little bit. Then if that were to be true, then I can see that there would be a place to land the other end of the gable.
I'm not following what you're saying she's looking for.
She's saying getting rid of the step back, the 1.5 foot step back
That
for the
puts the-
addition from the front of the
That
house.
puts the roof closer to the window.
Yeah, so the living room can be straight that wall instead of back.
But that puts the roof closer to the window.
Yes, but Dean, she's also suggested that
That
she's
top
willing to
window.
make a smaller window, and I'm suggesting she might want to raise the window.
Yeah, we saw with the contractor and he mentioned about with the codes in here we can add. So he mentioned to me, ask if you can do the top window smaller or do a little higher so we can keep it, or so the roof can be better positioned in the pattern.
If we look at the front elevation photo,
Would you be willing
it shows the side packages stepping back, which is a real traditional thing to do, steps back from the major house mass.
Would that
And
be
so
okay?
aligning it
I know
in the
you're
front and have two different roofs, I think would look a little bit awkward.
Discussing.
Yeah.
Chris could bring up a photo.
Would you like
Be
to
able to bring
pass
up
your
a photo of the
drawing
front
down,
elevation.
Dean?
You got a question, Mary Jo?
Oh, I'm so sorry, Mary Jo.
Oh, are you done with your drawing so I can get a look at
Oh,
what
sure.
you're proposing, so I get an idea of
You see what
how
I'm
that'll
saying on
look?
the roof, or the addition itself?
Oh, because it'll slope this way,
Yeah,
so it doesn't interfere with the window, I got
No.
you.
Let's pass this down to the applicant and see
I'm
what,
not
see
sure we're
what she
allowed
thinks.
to. Check with Frank. I don't believe we should be designing their building, so I want to make sure that it's not something that we're allowed, we are.
But choices are always a good
Allowed to
thing,
do.
The
and we're
applicant,
supposed to work with.
the applicant has just offered to delay for a month to bring back these plans next month and take your ideas into
That'd be great.
consideration.
That'd be
Dean,
great.
it is not a legal question. We are certainly allowed, if we can't proffer our ideas,
Okay.
and please let me finish. If we can't proffer our ideas, and then we can take them from verbal into some kind of a pictorial representation so that people can follow them, we are here to be user-friendly to the applicant. So why
If we're
would,
allowed to do it, I'm fine with that.
could we pass that down to the applicant, please, Frank?
Sure.
Okay.
You don't recall when we were first put on the commission, their requirements to us?
We'll have a private discussion about this. And
So as I was saying, the applicant has offered to take the ideas that you proffered into consideration, take them to our architect and come back next month
Okay.
and show
Okay.
you something then. I think that would be easier.
Great.
Instead of just adding a bunch of conditions to it and hoping that
Okay.
everything comes out right. So we'll get something physical that we can review and we'll come back at the October meeting.
great.
And Chris, do you need any more from us so that you
So
can
I would-
aid her with this?
I would, we would need you to vote on deferring the application until next month's
Okay.
meeting.
Thank you.
And this is all okay with you, correct?
Well, we can certainly, I think we ought to at least, since she's been here, give the okay on the shed to come back for
Right.
retroactive approval.
We can do that.
Yeah, can I ask another question? Sorry.
Yeah.
I know I don't want to make a confusion about the wall in the front, but if that possible that we can have the same wall in the front instead of back, or
Eliminating the setback that the existing porch currently has and that we proposed for the addition. So this step back right here.
so it can be the same line instead of having that little corner inside of the house.
What do you think?
Can you show that floor plan?
Of course. You may propose anything you want. We are not the aesthetic police.
Yeah, but I would love to have the same line with
Yes,
the wall.
of course. Of course you can.
And about the drawing here that he did, it's really nice example. I don't mind about the roof as long as I can have that space and it can build, we can work it out how it can be. And about the windows, if we have to make it bigger, up to the top and make it small, the windows, I would love to do that too, as long, because the rooms upstairs, I want to mention another thing, that's why I wanted to do this, because the roof upstairs in the room is really low. Every time we go into bed, we've been hitting in the wall because it's too low, so that's why
Because
I
of where
wanted
the
to do
dormers
this.
are. Yeah.
Sure, no, I fully understand.
Yeah.
I saw that when I
Yeah.
saw your dormers, I knew they were not very usable.
Yeah,
too.
and the rooms are really small
Right.
too, so
Yeah.
that's why we
Well-
concerned to do a bedroom downstairs, regular bedroom.
I can say this, since you're so willing to adjust the roof and the side massing, even though I think the front of the house should sit back because it's a smaller package to the major mass of the house, which is the traditional way of doing it, but because you're willing to make concessions for us, I'm happy to support that for you, to move it flush. Even though I don't think it's the right thing to do, I think in the end,
Thank you.
the trade-off that you're making will help the environment, so I'm all for it.
Yeah, thank you.
So can we vote for deferment for
Yes.
1 month?
Should we vote for condition 3 first and then vote for deferment of condition 1 and 2?
Yeah, and it seems to me we could do it if someone is willing to propose a motion, because the chair does not propose motions, that we have a motion adopting the retroactive approval of the shed, provided the applicant come back with an application, and defer action on the other two elements pending the applicant coming back with a new proposal for us at the next meeting.
Would you like to?
Citing the willingness of the
Give it a
applicant to
chance
such a
Yes,
deferral.
Can I-
yes, yes.
I will recommend a motion. I move that the Historic District Commission, based on the exhibits submitted and the staff report findings and the recommendation, grant Historic Area Work Permit HIST-7720-2017 for the retroactive shed review, finding it to be in compliance with City Ordinance 24-227.2 of the City Code, with the condition that the applicant must submit a shed permit application within 60 days of the HDC retroactive approval. I also move that we defer,
With the applicant's acquiescence.
yes, that we defer the 624 square foot addition and the siding replacement to the next meeting.
Yes.
Have we a
Second.
second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It carries 5-0. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much for coming.
Say, Chris,
Yes.
those, the papers right there, I need them for tonight's meeting.
Oh. She might need another copy to show her architect.
That is a nice drawing. You should think about a career in
Take
that.
mine.
No, I got my notes on it.
Oh, okay. All right, very well.
Oh,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, moving right along, we are now moving to 102 Chestnut with regard to a side porch.
And I would like to disclose that, hello, neighbor, I have another neighbor here. And yes, I can be impartial.
You can.
Yes.
But will you?
I-
Okay, all right, just checking. Very well.
The building at 102 Chestnut Street is a two-story Queen Anne-style residence that was constructed circa 1900. And my computer's frozen. There we go. The property is zoned R90, medium-density residential, and is contributing to the Chestnut Medium Historic District. The Historic Area Work Permit comes before the HDC in accordance with Section 24-227A of the City Code. The applicant proposes to replace the existing wood decking on the side porch with a 6-inch thick concrete slab. The Chestnut Medium Historic District Guidelines note the following on page 16 under House Design Elements, and we're looking at the first one. New, additional, and replacement construction work on existing houses should be compatible with the style descriptions of the contributing resources. The materials section of the guidelines also pertain to this project, particularly the second bullet point on deteriorated historic features. And the guidelines also address porches. Here's what it says about side porches in particular. According to the applicant, the side porch is at a low point in the yard, and rainfall from Meme Avenue currently drains toward the foundation of the house underneath the side porch. The applicant recently found a hole in the foundation underneath the porch where water had poured into the crawl space. The applicant said that regrading the side yard near the porch is not ideal because it would require more of the wood porch deck structural system to be buried in the dirt. The applicant said that replacement of the wood porch floor with concrete will do the following: prevent water from flowing against the foundation and keep runoff away from the residents, eliminate the low point in the side yard against the foundation, correct the approximately 1 foot tall porch stair riser that does not comply with the code required maximum riser height of 7 3/4 inches, eliminate the wood porch framing that is in direct contact with the ground. Here's a photo of the side porch from last week. And here's another angle. These are the applicant's plans. After the concrete is poured, the applicant will reinstall the existing wood porch railing and columns. The applicant has offered to paint the concrete to match the trim on the house so it blends in better. Here's a side profile of the concrete that shows how deep it will extend into the ground. Note that the applicant would like to include a vapor barrier should he ever wish to enclose the porch in the future. And of course, Mr. Philip Wessel is here if you have any questions.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
I think Chris did a fairly good job explaining the issues. One thing that I just want to make clear, when you stand out in the yard, when you have a heavy rain, obviously, as what was presented, the low point is against the house. Right out where the edge of the porch is, if the water stays out there, it will continue to drain around the front of the house and into the front yard. So you're not going to end up, and that's sort of the way the water flows now. Once the under the porch area fills up with water, it then continues around the front of the house and drains to the front yard away from the building. So this is sort of the, as far as I can tell, the best the best solution. A couple back in August when we had heavy rains, I had 2.5 feet of water in the crawl space that I had to pump out that was just from runoff. Regrading the entire side yard, right now the side yard price sits based on my eye without putting a transit on it, probably at the house 18 inches to 2 feet below Meme Avenue. So there's really no way to regrade that side yard. The dirt would end up being about at the windowsill level of the house, maybe a little lower than that. So, happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Robert, let's start on your side this time.
Okay. When I first was reading the staff report on this, I was a little concerned that the wood was, why are we losing the wood? You know, a lot of the details of it, but actually you've done an excellent job of explaining why. I think the concrete, I understand every issue you're discussing right now. I kind of have similar problems for my own house. The way it grades down goes right into the house. So, actually, I mean, I understand why you're doing it. I think as long as you keep as many aesthetic features as you can, you say you're going to reinstall the wood railings, everything else is
Yeah,
gonna
my intent is to salvage and extend the wood posts and reinstall the wood railings. Obviously, if I can't get them out in one piece, I'll replace them with the exact, the exact match and paint to match.
Okay.
The porch really is not, the real visible part of the porch is the roof and the railings. As you walk down Meme Avenue, if the concrete's painted to match, until you go up and kick it, you never really see the difference between what's there now and what it will be.
That's all I had.
One concern is because cement can contract and expand. I know there's certain rules about how close it should be actually to the house so it doesn't push on the house.
Yeah, the detail, there's a compressible filler called out there, and we'll look at the sizing. It's usually 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch of either foam or asphalt impregnated fiber that allows the concrete to expand and contract. This is a standard slab on grade detail against a house.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Commissioner Rowdy?
Like Commissioner Love, I do understand what you're facing and why you're trying to do this. It seems to me to be a reasonable approach.
Commissioner Ventolo?
Wood should not ever be in contact with earth. This was a mistake from the start. There's nothing that you could have done other than lower the grade significantly on your entire yard to allow for a porch to have the air underneath it that it needs. So it's absolutely required to remove wood and replace it with something. Concrete sounds harsh. One thing I was thinking of was, first, what were you going to do with it? Keep it exposed, but it sounds like from your answer that you're going to paint it. Another question then along those lines is, did you consider flag at all, flagstone?
I didn't, mainly for maintenance reasons, but also you would still have to build up the grade. You would still have to likely pour a slab.
Oh, I'm so
and
sorry.
You're talking about a flagstone on top of concrete?
Yeah, flagstone, yeah, concrete patio. That is just a question, and it's not, in my mind, a requirement.
Yeah, I mean, the issue we get, I considered flagstone, I considered brick, I considered a number of things, and the issue is with the way the grading works out, if I'm trying to get 6 inches of concrete slab, 6 or 7 inches, plus the topping, you end up having issues. You either have to push the slab down lower to get your topping on it, or you end up busting the code step height, the 7.5 inches. So I'm trying to keep the slab up high enough that I'm not going to get water at that joint between whatever cladding is on there, whatever topping is on there, and the slab.
I'm not sure I'm relaying it properly. What I would propose is the top of the porch remains as is. And if you did it in flag, then the flag thickness, which is I think maybe 3/8 of an inch, maybe 1/2 inch at the most, would just lower the 6-inch concrete plane. That's all.
Then
So-
I'd have to add a stair at either ends to be code compliant, because right now the top surface of the porch is at 12.5 to 13 inches.
I don't think I'm explaining it properly. What I'm saying is the top of the porch doesn't change, whether it's flag.
From my detail.
Right.
Okay.
It still stays the same. The step down still stays the same. But the thickness of the concrete stays the same. So you're just essentially lowering the bottom of the concrete by that 3/8 of an inch, lowering the top of the concrete 3/8 of an inch, and then you're putting a topping on. That's all I was suggesting.
Yeah,
And it's just a suggestion to you.
Okay.
I'm fine with it being concrete because you can't have wood there. I'm surprised you're not here with tears in your eyes, because this thing has just got to be rotting out and causing you tremendous trouble.
What's unbelievable to me is when I pulled it off based on the labels on the wood framing, that was installed and reframed within the last 15 years probably.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So somebody saw this, redid it,
Yeah.
and covered it back up again.
Sure. It's certainly problematic, so I have no concerns whatsoever, other than, helping you out here to get it resolved.
Okay, I have nothing to add, so the chair is certainly open to a motion.
Okay. I move that we approve HIST 7722-2017, including the staff recommended, based on exhibits submitted, the applicant's testimony, the staff report, findings and recommendation, replace wood side porch floor with concrete, finding it to be in compliance with 222272 of the city code with one condition: applicant to paint the replacement concrete porch to match the house trim.
Have we a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Phil, thank you. Congratulations. Okay, 20 Chestnut Street, we have another tree removal.
We do. The one-story minimal traditional
Oh,
style.
excuse me, anybody in the audience want to speak to this or any conflicts?
No
Okay,
conflicts.
all right.
Oh, I disclose, I am a neighbor also of 20 Chestnut.
All right, but,
It's my neighbor, it's coming forward tonight.
well, now this is 3 in a row.
I
Are
know.
you sure you can be impartial?
Yes, I can.
Okay, but even
I
if,
will.
even if it's what was your term for the tree, a public enemy?
Enemy of the
Enemy of
state.
the state.
Enemy of the state. Oh, all right.
Okay, the one-story minimal traditional style residence was constructed circa 1955. The property is zoned R90, medium-density residential, and is non-contributing to the Chestnut Meme Historic District. The applicant seeks approval to remove a tree in the rear yard because she said its roots are damaging the foundation of the residence. The Chestnut Meme Historic District guidelines note the following in regard to trees on page 13. The tree is an Atlanthus, which is an invasive species. It was listed in the 1999 tree inventory for the Gaithesburg Historic District, so staff seeks a condition that a replacement tree is planted on the property. Are there any questions?
I think so.
Dean, we're starting at your end this
All right.
time.
I have no questions, other than it's a beautiful tree. I do think it is very, very large, so if it is in any way having difficulties with its own structure or foundation, its root system, I should say, then I'm all for getting rid of it. Other than that, I don't see why we would want to vote getting rid of it.
Well, as our staff arborist noted, it is an invasive species.
Well, invasive, I get that.
All right, John.
Yes, the Ailanthus, or also known as the Tree of Heaven, isn't like the mulberry, another import from China. This possibly is the most invasive species, and it is, I can say of my own experience, I have fought a neighbor's Ailanthus for 42 years, and you have copious saplings that spring from this thing. It is very difficult to keep your yard orderly with this kind of a tree. It sends out seeds continually. But one of our standards is the effect on other neighbors. And truthfully, this is an awful tree.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, thank you. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Mary Jo?
I just wanted to note that although that the applicant must replace the tree, staff is going to be working with
Yes.
the applicant for that. Should that be included in the condition?
You could add that as a condition, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It is, isn't it in there?
No, it just says that a tree must be of appropriate species.
Okay.
I figured staff could help determine what an
Oh, sure,
appropriate species
sure.
would be.
And also location, I would assume.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Great. Robert?
Just a quick staff question. Was it confirmed that it is, like, it is causing the foundation trouble?
We were unable to get close enough to the house to confirm that. We were only able to confirm the species of the tree, so we have to take the applicant's word for it that it was causing damage to the foundation. And as I noted, the staff arborist was pretty fixated on the fact that it was invasive and it should be removed based on that alone.
You should know that the canopy is going to give you an idea of what the root system's going to be anyway. So based on even just this photo, you can see that the root system would definitely be going into the basement.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So the chair is open to a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay?
I move that the Historic District Commission, based on the exhibits submitted in the staff report, findings, and recommendation, grant Historic Area Work Permit 7726-2017, remove the tree in the rear yard, finding it to be in compliance with City Code 24-227.2 of the City Code, with one condition, that the applicant must plant a replacement tree of an appropriate species within 60 days of the HDC approval, and that staff works with the applicant to find the appropriate tree and the appropriate placement of that tree.
Okay, great. Thank you. Have we a second?
Yes.
Did you, Stuart?
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, did you request a caliper to be added?
The caliper, I believe, is already in
Okay,
It's in the regs, I think.
okay.
the code.
I would second the motion as
Okay,
made.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Okay. Incidentally, thanks to everybody that did all the Herculean work on the master plan. This is really an amazing document with an amazing amount of hard work. So I think some of us up here will never know the countless hours and blood, sweat, and tears that went into it, but it's quite a piece of work, so thank you.
So first, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Long Range Planning Manager Rob Robinson, and he'll give you an idea of the process that we went through to get this draft prepared and what will happen after this draft leaves this meeting. So,
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, Commissioners. As many of you remember, a little over a year ago, we sat down with you and the Planning Commission and did a work session to begin discussing the scope of the historic preservation element. And just to take a step back to bring everybody up to speed, we have a master plan composed of various elements. It's a living document, so we have a historic preservation element from the 2003 update. It's still valid. It will remain valid. Those sections that get overwritten in this, go forward. So we don't really start from scratch and reset the button every single time. Overall, this element is the first one. We wanted to do something different before we get into land use and transportation. We sort of wanted historic preservation, if there were land use elements, to stake their claim, so we can consider that when we begin doing recommendations on a land use level, that we become more sensitive to historic preservation assets. Again, our element is good for 10 years. What this is essentially establishes sort of the broad overarching framework and policy level things for what we wish to accomplish with this program. What it is not code. It is not a textbook on the history of Gaithesburg. We go into background only so much as it provides context to lead to a recommendation. The recommendations in this aren't expected to be fulfilled in year one. We have a decade, and sometimes they roll over to the next master plan update. But they're there to help guide council, planning commission, yourselves on how we view things. And each year with the annual strategic plan, we may derive specific action items from direction from council to implement that in the fiscal year. Again, it's sort of all this stuff right here. So why are we here tonight? Well, after the meeting, a little over a year ago, we took what you said, what the planning commission said, our own internal discussions, and we began working on the draft. And we are basically at 95%. So we wanted to come before you this evening to have you guys review it and give us comment. And what we're looking for tonight is consensus comment from the commission. We're not looking for individual wants. We're looking for something that you all are in agreement about. We want you to comment on the content, things we may have missed, things you liked, graphic things. We're not looking for punctuation. You don't go, Rob, there's a comma splice on page 44. We'll get that. We're looking for the big macro level issues from the commission. Next step after that, next month, we're going before the Planning Commission, doing a work session with them and doing the same thing. The comments we receive from the Historic District Commission tonight will be included in the Planning Commission's packet so they can understand where you guys are coming from. After that meeting next month, we as staff will look at all the comments, see if some make sense, some don't. We're not going to guarantee that everything you say will be incorporated, and maybe much of the stuff you've already discussed has been incorporated. At that point, we'll work on finalizing the public hearing draft. And under the state of Maryland, under the land use article, there's a 60-day required advertising period prior to the public hearing. So we're really hoping to be in a position to put this out for formal advertisement in November, earmarking potentially, because it rolls over the holidays, we'll extend it out a little bit beyond 60 days, but probably looking, late January for the official public hearing at that point. once we really get into the process, while the council and the planning commission's records are open, at a certain point, Chris or myself will be coming back before you. We will want your formal comment to transmit to the council on the hearing draft, either support, non-support, changes that you may wish. But that's really what we're doing. And this evening, really staff is here to listen to you. If you have questions, we're happy to answer them. Chris is basically going to walk you through the document. Explain, the various facets. Obviously, we'd like to focus somewhat on the recommendations, but again, we're really here. We're not here to debate, engage in that sort of fashion. It's really to have you guys discuss amongst yourselves. Did we get everything? We tried to really focus on a lot of the stuff the commission, your commission, spoke about with the planning commission at that work session. Things like new sustainability elements. Some of the thing about public engagement, dispelling the myth that historic preservation is bad. That was a major theme coming from your group heading into it, and I think Chris has done a wonderful job of trying to capture a lot of these facets. Again, we're not going to be able to include everything, but we really want to have stuff set up. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chris to begin walking you through the element.
All right.
Yeah, Chris, can I just ask one thing to my fellow commissioners? Because it's a long document. I just wonder if, first, has everybody read this thing?
Yes.
Okay. Second, my thinking is rather than you having to run through all the elements, if any of the commissioners had stuff prior to the recommendations, they could just speak up. I don't per se. And then we could really focus on the recommendations, but that's not to cut you short.
I'll just briefly go through it. It'll take just a couple minutes, and it can
Okay.
be a refresher for
Okay.
everyone if you've looked
Okay.
at it a couple days ago.
He's not going to read it to you.
No.
We already
Okay.
said
All
we're
right.
not going page by page.
So the overview, chapter 1, we have a brief overview on what's covered in the element. This graphic shows what we hope preservation can achieve, and this is a focus of the document that you'll see recurring: social, economic, and environmental sustainability. Chapter 2, the introduction, discusses the city's existing preservation program, the role of the preservation element and how the plan will be utilized, how the plan relates to other master plan elements, as this graphic shows. We give an analysis of the 2003 element and its relevance going forward. We divide the preservation program into 6 areas. First, the administrative, how the program operates. Next, identification, how resources are discovered and organized within wider historical themes. Management, how resources are protected. Incentives and benefits is about the perks available to historic property owners. Education, how preservation is taught to the community. Advocacy, how preservation is promoted in the city of Gaithesburg.
Which was a big theme that your commission wanted stressed at that work session.
Yep.
Chapter 3, we divided the city's history into 6 development eras and point out key surviving properties from those eras. Before the railroad's arrival until the end of World War I. And then from the end of World War I to the end of World War II. The end of World War II to the end of the 1960s after NIST's arrival in the area. The 1970s, suburban development, and from the 80s today. Chapter 4. This chapter addresses all resources of note with tables and graphs and maps, whether already designated or with the potential for designation. So as I noted, there are a number of tables and maps showing where these resources are located. And these are resources with photos and descriptions that have been designated since the last master plan, which was adopted in 2007. And also corresponding maps. We have our courtesy review areas. And Chapter 5, Historic Preservation in Action. Going back to the overview at the very beginning of this document, this is the chapter in which we describe how preservation supports the 3 areas of sustainability. First, environmental sustainability, and then economic sustainability, and finally, social sustainability. And this should read Chapter 6, Preservation Objectives and Action Items. This is where we lay out our plan for the future of preservation in the city. We have 8 different objectives with associated action items underneath. And that takes us to the end of the document. So we opened it up now for discussion. Any comments you have, as Rob said, we are seeking consensus on anything that you would like added, removed, or anything that you like just how it is.
All right. Dean, we're starting at your end this
All right.
time. Did we,
I'm sorry?
I'm trying to remember which way
You can go start there.
okay, Robert, let's start with you then.
First of all, this looks great. I helped update master plans before, and they can keep you up at night. So I totally understand what's going on here. No, I think this is great. The way you've broken everything down, it's very easy to get through. The focus is, you've done a really great job. I really have nothing to add to it except well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a great amount of work, and I truly appreciate there was just one little thing. When we're talking about managing historic resources, there was a note that said, staff will review non-contributing resources. And it made it sound like it wasn't going to come before us anymore. And I want to clarify that because as we know tonight, we had a non-contributing resource. We spent most of our evening on that one application. So I would request that they continue the non-contributing to come before us, or at least if they're more than 50 years old or older. So can I get a consensus?
yes,
or
you have
would
mine.
like to
Yes.
discuss?
Absolutely.
Good catch.
Well, yes and no.
I heard
and let me
3.
tell
I
you-
heard consensus. I heard 3 definite yeses.
Okay, so let me tell you why I say that. If this doesn't mean we aren't in consensus, I thought it was very interesting that in the document as I read it, it was that 50 years was just an initial trigger. So it's the distinction between identification and designation. And that then one would look to, was it prominent architecturally, was it prominent historically, and so forth and
Yes.
so on.
Yes, agreed.
So my concern is if we just say arbitrarily, okay, well, it's now 2017 and we're gonna have a rolling 50-year marker where something, is now contributing, that we're really setting up a disaster for spending a lot of times on pretty nondescript properties.
The chair is very much correct. That was our thinking, because in our discussion and going through this and understanding that it's a 10-year, by the expiration of this, essentially all the Brady Bunch homes from the 70s
Yeah.
potentially could be coming here. The Planning Commission had dealt with similar situations, which sort of allowed them to expand what was allowed as a staff approval. So we weren't eating up tons of meeting time on things, reviewing every single door change on a housing unit because it had an approved elevation. So sort of the thinking about this is that as we get into homes from the 70s and 80s that will hit that 50-year benchmark, it is, do you want to allow staff potentially the ability to handle some of these as a staff level approval, what we call on the community planning side, a minor amendment, or is this something the HDC wishes to review every single change?
Well, yet sometimes a non-contributing resource, the city staff recommends that we approve an application, and after discussion, we decide that that might not be the direction that we were to go in. So, sort of like the retroactive approvals that we don't care to do. If we have an opportunity to make it a better project in the end because of our contribution to it, I think we would lean towards wanting to contribute than not. Now, on the other hand, we had discussed what things would be reasonable for the city staff to be allowed to do, and I think that we need to decide what those are, but certainly an emergency tree removal is one of them already, and there may be some things that we already have said in a condition that staff will work with applicant with so forth, and then it's done. So, gentlemen?
What about the idea of changing the 50 to 60?
And it doesn't even have to be 50. I was just kind of throwing it out there.
Just as a
Yeah.
benchmark, because I
Yeah.
think any house that the staff feels
Yeah.
is worth preserving, that's only 50 years old, I think would fall into the category if the staff thought a house that's only 40 years old,
Mhm,
they
mhm,
would want
mhm.
to save and preserve, could bring to us.
And there is one more thing that Chris so brilliantly brought up is architectural design and who was the architect. Sometimes a property can be less than 50 years old, but it is so interesting and historically important that by itself. So that would be something else that would be guidance that we would like to be in the documents.
Well, let me throw this out, so maybe we're all talking about the same thing. That, be it 50 or 60 or whatever, is sort of an initial, just sort of a trigger point that the staff and we will keep in mind. But then, my only concern is if we set something that's an automatic trigger so that everybody has to come in with a hop, rather than letting staff look and giving them the flexibility, not only to say, look, this is really in a pretty late subdivision, and what they're proposing here is pretty substantially similar to their neighbors, so no harm, no foul. Conversely, here is something that may only be 30 years old, yet maybe some noted architect or some prominent person, for example, though it's older than 50 years, there's the esteemed Brody home, which might be designated. But also I was amused to see, Sidney Katz's place may be listed because of its prominence. So
Exactly.
all I'm saying, if it's a trigger, I don't think it should be a trigger that mandates both for the applicant and the staff and for us that it require HDC review. And this will come to the fore later in one of my thoughts about the perception, fair or not, about whether my home should be designated, and is the HDC here to help us or hurt us? So that's my humble opinion. IMHO, as the kids say.
I think we could have both, and maybe if staff could work on a set of criteria there that if it hits this, this, and this,
Mhm.
then you have to go before the HDC. And if it's something that you feel is, like I said, only 30, 40 years old and it can be reviewed in-house, then that should be done. But if you come up with that criteria, I don't see why you can't have both the
Right.
50-year mark and also if you hit these various things.
It's an excellent idea, because and that really is my concern, which is how do you tell a homeowner whose house it needs to come before the HDC, that he thinks is very similar to the house next door that didn't. And so the criteria will be something that will give you the legal backing to just, in fact, do that. I think that's a great idea.
But in apropos our applicant tonight, with the addition, that came before us because it was in the Neem district, I assume.
Correct,
and
yes.
Only for that reason.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
But it's a non-contributing, so that's why I wanted
Yeah,
to-
I still wish it wasn't
Yeah,
non-contributing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we opposed our will. But anyway, okay, what else? So have we scrambled that up enough for you guys? Okay.
No, it was very clear. It was a good point. We understand. So, what I'm hearing, and just so I can repeat it back to make sure we're going to capture it correctly, is that the note about non-contributing resources, maybe we amend that statement to bring in to establish criteria, because we have to write things in the
Right.
sense of a master
Yes.
plan recommendation. We're not writing it as changing the code.
Right.
So I think we can do those tweaks.
Yeah, yes. Now, John, we didn't get to you yet. How about your thoughts?
I will be brief and I'll confine myself just to generalities. I think it is very important that we educate the public as to our standards and our goals. And I think this document does capture very well why we do what we do. That this involves a rule of reason. It's not just based entirely on age of a particular property. And I think it also demonstrates that there are long-range benefits to the community that will outweigh the short-term hassles to the homeowner. So I think you guys have done a very good job.
Thank you.
Dean?
All right, I have a lot to say, and it's mostly all good. It's really all good, but a couple of suggestions. And I do want to say these things because want you guys to know what a great job you did, and I want you to maintain these things. This is my recommendation: you maintain the excellent level that you guys have done. The cover I thought was outstanding. You open that thing up, and I think that should be a book in the Library of Congress. It will really, really good. Your table of contents, I loved how you changed the colors of each section, each division. That was wonderful, whoever came up with that idea. I would recommend on the list of contents, you have listing for the most recently designated. You list all the 7 or 8 of them, which is wonderful. And you do that throughout. But on the previously designated, you don't say the chestnut memes item, and so
How did I miss that?
or the Brooks Walker. So just put those in because I was looking for them on the table of contents. I couldn't find them. The acronyms is a great idea to include. I thought that will help the layman understand things so much better. Everything in here was wonderful. I love the preservation program overview where you describe the players that teaches people. And John brought this up, it teaches people. I thought this was a marvelous teaching tool to anyone who's saying, really, what is preservation all about? What really is Gaithesburg all about? And this is the best resource I think I've ever seen on Gaithesburg. And there are a lot of good ones out there. The identification versus the designation, to understand the difference between those, that's a wonderful teaching tool. The Gaithesburg historic books in your reference and the pictorials that you show, I thought that was great. Those are great books, and I think those authors really should be proud to be part of this document. And the survey techniques was also a wonderful teaching tool. The ordinances and regulations, defining the demolition, the designation, design guidelines, and the IBC code, that's all information people don't have prior to reading this, so I thought those were wonderful. The incentives and benefits, I think, is probably the most important thing that we should get out to the public, because in the end, that helps them save money to save our buildings. And so, if nothing else, I can't talk about that enough. I don't think the city can talk about that component enough. The thumbnails that you did provide, the photos that you provided in this document, I thought were stunning, one after another after another. I called this a page turner because every time I went to another page, I was like, these are some beautiful buildings, these are some beautiful photos, the layout is terrific. So based on that, I recommend to you that you have like 5 lists, and they're long lists each. But only 2 of them I'd like to comment on, and that is on page 29, you have previously designated, and on page 44, you don't have to turn to them, on page 44, potential designation. All I would recommend is that you add a thumbnail photo to the left-hand side of these 2 charts, because when I look at these names, I say, okay, I kind of remember what that looks like, but a picture is worth 1,000 words. And you've got 5 such charts, and again, I'm only saying 2 of them, the previously designated and potential designated. The other 3 are, future stuff, things of note. You don't have to do that. And one easy way to do it, because I see that you have varying thicknesses of the lines. If you make each of these individual lines 3 lines thick. That is 3 text lines thick. To make them all, that would therefore make them all uniform. Whether or not it has 2 lines of text, just make it 3 lines of text thick. So then the photos will all be the same, just rectangular or square photos in there. So it would all be rhythmic, and you wouldn't have smaller photos for only 2-line text and larger photos for 3-line text. But I thought that was terrific. I would suggest that when you came to, on page 30 and 31, for the maps of memes and maps of Brooks Walker, you have in there areas of memes, and then you put the word edition there. I'm not sure where the edition is. And then on the next page as well, I'm not sure if the edition is for Walker, because you got 2 editions, parallel, on each side of Walker Street. And then I don't know if the edition down at the bottom right is for Russell or for Brooks. So if you could just clarify, the edition is Walker edition, or the edition down the bottom right is Brooks edition, or whatever. That would have helped me understand what that was. Then my favorite page of all is page 39, which is most recently designated, because all those were designated, other than one, which was 2008. All of them were in 2010 and 12, and I believe we had a little bit to do with that, and I'm proud of that. So that, and those pictures, as a matter of fact, those projects looked wonderful, and I'm proud to be part of saving those. And then I guess my last thing is, I was looking for the authors, a list of who the authors were. I think this document is so wonderful. I highly recommend that you put somewhere contributing to, and put the names of you guys, because it is that good and you really deserve the credit. So that's it.
Thank you.
Alrighty, as is my wont, I've had last, so I can't say enough for the detailed work, and I think the kudos were well articulated and deserved. I have a particular bent at here, having been chair, and very proudly so, for a number of years, and it has always been my commitment, representing the city, that anyone that comes before us feel that they were dealt with fairly, openly, and efficiently, that we use everybody's time and energy to the max. And then I'm aware, anecdotally as it was noted in here, the perceptions of this commission and other HDCs, and the notion of being designated, and negative economic impacts, and so forth and so on. To that end, as some of the people up here know, John, you don't know this, I'm our representative to the Maryland Association of Historic District Commissioners, and really honored to do so. And believe me, we stand out. We got Chris's article on the log smokehouse. He is providing a précis of the economic study he did to basically dispel the myth of negative economic consequences of designation for the MHDC newsletter and so forth. Recently, the MHDC got a request from Frederick, Maryland. The HDC chair there was concerned about the negative perception of his commission from 3 different sources: public, the applicants; merchants who were tenants in historical buildings; and developers. And so he proposed the notion of, let's have some public hearings. And they asked for facilitators, of which I happen to be one, so I volunteered. So they're going to be applying for a grant later on, and I explained that if there was to be any payment, it should be an honorarium to the MHDC. Now, how is that relevant here? I don't know how much, Rob, it's what you said. We're pointing ourselves at a vector, at an orientation for 10 years. So we're not here to designate specific action items, in the next month. But I see several things. I think it would be very important that we have some public hearings. And whether we mention that specifically or not. And then there's something else I've been thinking about. that we have some kind of an evaluation form. Or we solicit people, and we solicit ideas on how we can improve our performance. Does an applicant coming before us through the whole process, whether it's Chris when it hits your office or Greg's, when it comes to us, so I think it's worth mentioning some kind of a feedback loop. Can we be continuously improving? I know my commitment, I mean, every one of these commissioners here is and our members who are not here tonight, very hardworking, very bright, very capable. But are we showing ourselves open to wanting to get feedback? How can we be more transparent? How can we be more user-friendly? And how can we be viewed as more effective, where somebody comes to us, maybe not because they can't think of anything better to do, but if they come here, they know they're going to get some professional, can-do, let's work together on this kind of good guidance, and that they have every opportunity to be heard. So that's my pitch.
I think those are excellent points. As Rob pointed out on page 63, which I have on the overhead screen, we have under the objective, the first action item. I think that fits in
Yep.
what you're trying to say.
Yep. Well, I don't know of any group that, the HTCs that act for feedback. But in industry, many people do. I mean, I heard Jeff Bezos the other day, and he's a maniac. The only thing they care about is the customer. So anyway, thank you. But magnificent job, really. John, I'm glad you're here to hear this. I mean, I want to tell you, from having been someone who, when my wife and I were working on the Gaithesburg Inn, we had 5 appearances before the group that preceded this, to all the years being here. This is the most amazing city and the most professional, can-do staff support. It is amazing. When Sidney used to say, and now Judd does now, there's a saying in West Virginia, it ain't bragging if you can do it. And this city is amazing. You staff people are just amazing. So thank you.
That's exactly why I came tonight. Hear that.
Yeah, and I was on the board that helped get you. Yeah, we were glad to nab you. We're glad to nab this rascal over here. Okay, so what else do you, Rob, Chris, what do you need from us as a commission? Anything more?
Well, if that's all you have,
I mean, candidly, the real issue was, because the meat of this is the Chapter 6 and the recommendations and so much, we want to make sure, that in a sense, from your commission's perspective, we left no stone unturned. Again, as you can see, we did take a lot of what you said at the work session and incorporated it along with the Planning Commission's comments.
Yeah.
But this really is, as as I mentioned, at the end of October, what we're going to be doing is final formatting cleanup, one more
Right.
glean for grammar and punctuation, and then this is going to hit the streets for 60 days, 60 plus days for public comment. So this is really a chance before it gets out of there where it's not in the more formal, and we recommend the following changes to the council. This is a chance for us to interact and hear if you have something. So again, if you're pleased, if I come away with a couple graphic changes and one tweak to one note regarding clarifying criteria, whew, I'm pretty happy with that. I've been through other ones where
and there are things that go in the obvious but unsaid. In other words, when we talk about education, what Dean said, oh my gosh, if we can get out the economic benefits, if we can start touting Chris's study, if we can start having outreach and people give us feedback from those 3 constituent groups, the developers, merchants who are tenants in historic buildings, and then also current or potential homeowners and maybe even real estate agents. So it'll be up to us to put some flesh on the bones here, but you've got a wonderful framework for us, it seems to me. So any commissioners, anything more for Rob or Chris?
Don't think so.
Matt?
Just remember all these when we come back and ask you for your formal recommendation to council. No okey dokes. You're not going to pull a 180 on us. Amazing. And we want to hear that term a lot. We want the council to hear those terms.
Here's the good news, Rob. We're on TV. You can have your own copy.
Maybe
of
that's
this.
what we'll do. We'll
all
make sure we put in the
autograph it,
record.
And then you'll say, wait a minute. You know, it's like Law and Order. Oh, excuse me. Wait a minute. But you said under oath.
Well, maybe I should mention one tiny little thing.
Pages 40
That's
through
why
50.
we're here. So again,
We
you know,
had discussed, but have not come to a conclusion as to what it's going to be called or how far away or around it would be for a historic district. But protective barrier.
Impact areas, is that what you're
Impact.
referencing?
Yes, yes.
We do have those currently in the city code. It's just a matter of implementing. So if that's something that you would like to take up again, we could address those at a future HDC meeting.
Good, so it doesn't have to be included in this.
It does not have to be
Because
included.
I would think for planning and so forth, it might be a concern of a developer if they're near an impact review area, so I thought I'd bring it up.
Mhm.
So good, we're all done. Thanks.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Chris, you're there at the mic. Any staff, or Frank or John, any staff updates?
Just very briefly to thank the chair and vice chair for attending Frank's Open Meetings Act training on September 12th.
So it wasn't just
And thank you, Frank.
mine, but thank you
I haven't
for
signed
your
my diploma.
attendance.
I'm looking for a frame for it now, Frank.
Very good,
Thank
yes.
you. What else, Chris?
That's all I have.
Okay. From the commission, anybody on the dais, anything for the good of the order?
No?
John, Frank?
I will say in terms of the open meetings trainings, there are actually two more that I'll either be participating in or handling, and some, because of the change of the law, we were urging the academy and MML that we need to move on this, and there was an element of, oh, really? Whereas now, with the effective date of the legal change requiring a level of training and requiring designation for each board, having been October 1st, I mean, I got an email earlier in the week, because there were very few certified trainers, saying, well, you're the last one we have, can you make yourself available for early November? And it's actually the Planning Commission, where we have a couple of folks involved in our Planning Commission too. That is the Maryland
Yeah.
Planning Support Group, much like the MAHDC. In any event, we were certainly ahead of the game, and thank you all for that, Chair and Vice Chair both, for coming out.
Thank you. And it was a full, you must have had, what, 100 people or so?
I think it was maybe a little over 80, but it was definitely a full house.
Good for you. And you guys did a great job of keeping it moving and alternating.
Oh, yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
Well, the chair is certainly open to a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Have we a second?
Second.
Oh, give it to her.
All right, all in favor?
Aye. I think we're ready to
Instead of like we break.